Okay, so I'm on the same document, okay, and you will see this on Canvas, and here is the ser and the explanation of it. But let's move on to tener. So ser is not so hard, okay? It's different than the conjugation chart, but you know, and its forms look weird, okay? There's no rhyme or reason why they look like that. But if I just start studying that chart, then I understand that ser goes to soy, eres es, somos son. Okay? But tener is not only not a verb that follows the chart, but there's a lot going on with tener. If you hear Spanish 2 students going around talking about tener and boot verbs and sem changing verbs, this is one of them, okay? Tener is a verb that Spanish 1 students should be exposed to, so don't feel like, why is she showing us a tener verb when she's not even here and it's a Spanish 2 verb? Well, it's not a Spanish 2 verb, and I'm showing it to you now because we will need it for this chapter. Okay, so tener means to have, and I write that down somewhere, that tener means to have. And remember that infinitives, when I translate infinitives to English, I have to have the word to, okay? Because the infinitive shows me to do a certain action. So tener shows me to have. Okay, I have, you have, she has, he has, we have, they have, you all have, it has. Okay, so we use that verb all the time in English. Have is one of the most commonly used verbs in both of these languages. So this one's important to know. So first things first, I write in my notebooks, tener means to have. Then I copy the chart that I see here, that yo tengo, tú tienes, él, ella, usted, or it, singular, tiene, nosotros, nosotras tenemos, ellas, ellos, ustedes tienen. Now maybe one of you have the question, why do I have that X in that box? I have that X in that box because that's vosotros form. And I typically only use vosotros in Spain, or any old Spanish documents, okay, will have it. So will you hear tenéis? Perhaps, yes, but not normally. But that's the conjugation for the X, so it's one less verb I have to, in a sense, memorize. Now, so I write that down, and then I want you to hear me very closely. This picture right here shows you that tener is a boot verb. Okay, you're going to start hearing boot verbs when we learn more boot verbs. This is our very first one. So let's understand the concept. So if the drawing that you see here of the boot works for you, put it in your notes. If words make sense to you more than pictures, then you want to write what I'm about to say. Tener does not follow the verb conjugation chart. Tener does not follow the verb conjugation chart. And in a sense, it actually does, though. Because look at the endings of the verb. The ending of the verb, so you know what? Scratch that. The ending of the verb does follow the chart, but why does it look different then? What about this verb looks different? It's actually not the endings. If I look at ER endings, I have O. Okay, I have that. I have ES. Have that. I have E. Then I have EMOS. Then I have EN. So it's not the endings that look different. It doesn't follow the chart in the sense of the stem is different, but the chart has nothing to do with the stem. So if I'm writing something in words and I write tener has a stem change, well, what does that mean? What does stem change mean? Well, if ER is the ending of the verb, then everything before ER is the stem, or the root, or the base of the verb. You're going to hear me say stem most often. Occasionally I will say root of the verb. but most times you're going to hear me say the stem of the verb. The stem of the verb is every other letter besides ER. And so if this verb was not a stem changing verb, then I would have TEN and then add the endings that I see on the verb chart. But if I look at this chart that I see on this document, it's slightly different. The endings are in fact the same, but something in the stem changes. Here's what changes. So if I'm a person who needs to write words in my notes to keep me accountable to remember this information, here's what I write. That the E that I highlighted changes to IE. But Señorita Barzeski, I don't see that the E changes to IE in every form. Correct. So in my notes, when I write that E changes to IE, I write E changes to IE inside the boot, except for, okay, so let's restate, what I just said for those of you taking notes that need it in words. E changes to IE inside the boot, except for the yo form. So now for my visual learners, I look at the photo down here of this boot, okay? Let's see if I can highlight it. Well, it's not letting me. So follow along with me, the boot here. I draw a boot, okay? And if I were there, I would do this on the board for you. But inside the boot, I can see that the conjugations of tener change to IE. Okay, E goes to IE, except for the O form. So if you Google, tener, verb, boot verbs, some of the boots have a hat on it. Okay, so think of it like a cuff on the boot or fur. Okay, you have Ugg boots and then there's fur at the top. Okay, so the fur at the top is the yo form, so that's somewhat separate from the rest of the boot. So inside the boot, but not the fur or the cuff at the top, has that stem change, and I see it here. But the cuff of the boot or the yo form, so stay with me, yo tengo, this very top one here, does not have a stem change. I don't have TIE, I have TE. But something weird happens at the end of that verb. I have GO and not just O. So that's where it's irregular. This is called an irregular yo verb because it doesn't follow the chart that says I just add O. The chart tells me, the conjugation chart says that yo forms of verbs, I just add an O. But here I didn't do that. I added GO because it's irregular. It's called a go verb. And we will later in this semester get to go verbs. And go verbs are just that. They have the word GO in them. And they're irregular yo. They just simply don't follow the chart. But I do not stem change my go verbs. So if I'm a person who likes words, I write that down in my notes. I do not stem change go verbs. And that is the reasoning why tengo looks the way it does. So I keep the stem the same, TEN, that's the stem. And instead of just adding O like the chart says, I add go. All right, so let's go back. So inside the boot, I'm down looking at the boot. Inside the boot, I have a stem change where I take the E in tener and I change it to IE, but not with the cuff. So the cuff is different. That's just a go verb, so it's irregular. But now let's look outside of the boot. I still have two verb conjugations, but they're not included in the boot, and they don't have a stem change. Now for us, we don't necessarily need the nice. Okay, we're not going to really use it. But tenemos, we will. Because we have is something that we're going to say a lot. So we have tenemos, nosotros tenemos, is something we'll use a lot, but the E does not go to IE. It's just regular, as if the whole verb was regular. Okay, these two verbs outside of the boot are the only two that literally follow the chart and everything's normal and there's no strange spelling happening, there's no weird endings, it's just normal. So tener has a lot going on, and that's what I explain here. Okay, tener is a boot verb because inside the boot its stem changes. We talked about that the stem is every letter before the ER. So in this case, it's TEN. We looked at the E in TEN changes to IE inside the boot except for the O form. Now we learned two things. Tener is a boot verb and tener is a stem changing verb, which is the same thing said differently. Okay, a boot verb means it's a stem changing verb. So if I need to write that down, I say the boot verbs or boot verbs are stem changing verbs. Always. If it's a boot verb, it's a stem changing verb inside the boot. But we learned, okay, so tener is a boot verb, but tener is also an irregular yo verb. So I write that down somehow, that tener has two different things happening. It's a boot verb, which makes it a stem changing, but it's also an irregular yo, because I don't have teno, T-E-N-O, I have tengo, T-E-N-G-O. Okay, so knowing that, here's the translations in English, okay? I have tengo, you have tienes, she has tiene, we have tenemos, you all have tienen, they have tienen. Okay, and so that's translations for you, just in case you needed it in the chart, okay? This document is on Canvas. So under week 1, it says Ser and Tener document. You click it and you'll be able to see this pop right up. You don't even have to download it. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. So if you have questions on tener, email me. So quick review. Ser means to be, and it's just irregular. It does not follow the chart. So I have soy, eres, es, somos, son. Tener means to have. It's a boot verb, and it's an irregular yo. So I have tengo, tienes, tiene, tenemos, tienen. So questions on verbs, please email me. These two conjugation charts you need to start looking over, okay? And that was written many times in the instruction pages listed on Canvas that you needed to look over ser and tener.